My husband and I lived in an older house in Saskatchewan before we were married, and some really creepy things happened while we were there. The house was fairly old. It still had an unfinished dirt basement, and the second floor consisted of 2 small rooms on either side of a very steep, narrow set of stairs. At the top of the stairs was a very small little cupboard, which was too small to keep anything in. It just had a tiny little butterfly-type latch that didn't really latch. I used the room to the right of the stairs. It was fairly small, and the ceiling was really low in half of it where the roof came down. It had one older style window that you could lift open upwards with a bit of a struggle, and it only opened up about 1/5 of the way. I had a mattress that I slept on under the low part of the roof. I made sure my bed was made and tidied up every morning before I left the house. One afternoon, my now husband and I returned home at the same time, walking in the back door together. He headed right into the bathroom, and I headed upstairs to put my things away. I got upstairs and found my bedding all messed up and crumpled in a little heap at the bottom of my mattress. I put my stuff down and went downstairs to ask my partner why he'd done that. It was a dumb question because I knew he'd been at work all day, but he was the only other person who could have been in the house. There was no way it could have been him, and he confirmed it when I asked. I went back upstairs to tidy it back up and almost had a heart attack when I got up there. My blankets were now on the floor, crumpled up beside the mattress, and it looked like someone had spilled a glass of water on it in the middle. I have no explanation for it. That was the last time I slept up there. I moved to the hide-a-bed couch in the living room after that. Every night around 2:30 to 3 a.m., what sounded like a herd of elephants would run up and down the stairs. It was so creepy. We eventually found out that the older lady who had originally owned the house lived there alone. Her son checked in on her every day, except once when he had to go out of town on business. He was only gone for a few days, but when he returned, he found her deceased at the bottom of the stairs. She had fallen. The stairs were so steep and pretty narrow, broken her hip quite badly, and died from the fall as nobody was aware it had happened. Other random, strange things happened there as well. Items would go missing, only to be found in the very back of one specific cupboard we used for clothes. The TV would turn off and on randomly during the night too. I was more than happy when we moved from that house. In the early 90s, my mother and I lived with my grandmother, my father's stepmother. She was in her mid-80s and had been living alone for a few years after my father passed away. One night we were watching TV. My grandmother's favorite station was CNN. More on that later. When the program we were watching ended, my mother turned off the TV. A few minutes later, my grandmother was getting up to go to bed when she said to my mother, "Why are you closing the curtains?" My mother replied, "We aren't closing any curtains," or something to that effect. My grandmother then proceeded to go to her bedroom. I didn't think anything of it after that. In the morning, I got up to go to the bathroom, which was right next to my grandmother's bedroom. As I passed by her bedroom door was open. I noticed that she was staring out into the hallway. I continued into the bathroom to do what I went there for. After I left, I went into the dining room where my mother was sitting. I said something to her about how my grandmother was staring into the hallway. My mother then checked on my grandmother and realized that she'd passed away during the night. Several months later, my mother and I were watching a program on the History Channel that had just ended, so I turned off the TV. About 15 to 20 minutes later, while we were just talking, the TV came on by itself. It was a large tube-type console TV from the late 70s or early 80s that still used a couple of vacuum tubes. The channel was CNN, and the remote was still sitting on the table, untouched. My mother and I looked at each other, and she said that my grandmother must have turned it on to watch CNN. I was in the Sunday morning choir. We just finished performing a song, and we all sat down. Suddenly, I felt a rush of warmth pass through me. I looked at my watch, and it was 10:57 a.m. I motioned to my husband and mouthed, "We need to leave." So we both got up. As we were walking down the hall, he kept asking if I was mad or upset with someone. I repeatedly told him no, but that something was terribly wrong, and explained the rush of warmth. We went home and ate lunch, but I couldn't shake the sense that something was off. I had an afternoon meeting, and when I left, I called my dearest and closest friend, with whom I spoke multiple times a day. She didn't answer, so I left a message. After the meeting, I fully expected that I would have a message from her. Receiving nothing at all, I started calling her family members and mutual friends, as it was highly unusual. After a couple of hours and multiple phone calls, she was found dead, propped up on the floor by her nightstand. When I arrived, I had to make the decisions concerning her arrangements. As she had granted me power of attorney, I opened up her phone to look at her calls. She had received one at 10:57 a.m. I think she woke up to answer it, had a heart attack, and died. I believe she came to church to tell me goodbye that morning,